Okay, so I'm Ellen Kreth, and you cannot see me off camera, but I am here with the General Manager of the Madison County Record, Shannon Hahn, and we are interviewing school board candidates for Zone 4 today. And we are going to let them introduce themselves real quick in just a minute, and then we'll jump into the questions. But just a quick reminder, on May 24th, the people will vote on school board candidates. It is not a race that goes to the general election. The school board races are decided during the primary race. So the school board candidates elected on May 24th will take office in June at the June school board meeting. So that's important to remember. That will be decided May the 24th, unless there's a runoff, and then that would happen at a later time. So I'm going to pitch it to our candidates to introduce themselves first, and then we'll get started with the questions. So Tony, I'm going to let you go first.
My name is Tony Johnson, and I was not born and raised here, but I've lived in Madison County for 33 years. I am now retired, but I raised 4 children that went to St. Paul's School, and then my youngest, my daughter, did high school here in Huntsville. I feel that I am uniquely qualified for being on the school board due to the fact I have a bachelor's degree in education. I worked for Head Start as a home visitor, which meant I went out to the homes, traveled the roads and taught the children that way. I also worked for Madison County DHS as a family service worker. That's a social worker, mostly foster care, but I did a little bit of everything. So I've had experience being in family court, juvenile court with those children. I have done a lot of community service work in the community. I volunteer a lot. I have been in the Kiwanis Club for 10, going on 11 years now, been past president. I'm a member of the Tobacco Advisory Council with Brenda Patterson over at the Health Unit. That's part of the Health Coalition. And I also teach classes up at the skating rink with the organization. It used to be called Teen Challenge. It is now, they had to get rid of that and change it. It's called Living Free. But I teach classes up there, and that's for people who most of the time are court ordered to attend a class. They've got parenting, 12-step for people with addictions, anger management, and a codependency class, and I can teach those.
Okay.
Okay, my name is Stephen Ford. Moved here back in 1987 with my job. Worked for the U.S. Department of Agriculture / NRCS, and I've retired at 37 years. Had 2 children here, both graduated from here. I got 5 grandkids. Next year will be in school, and I'm originally from Ozark. I graduated from Arkansas Tech University back in '79 with an ag business degree, and that's it.
Okay. Josh?
I'm Josh Obenchain. I born and raised in Clifty, Arkansas. Went to school here, graduated in 2004. Went to Arkansas College of Electricity, actually in the school up here at Huntsville. Got 2 children here. My son will be he'll start 6th grade this upcoming school year. My daughter will start kindergarten. Just looking to give back to the community that's been so good to me.
Okay. Stephen, we're going to start with you for the first question. What are your thoughts on the district's growth in numbers and diversity, and what ideas do you have for managing that growth?
Well, I think we've got a big opportunity, especially for the school, to go ahead and grow in numbers. It's because our economic development here in Huntsville is gradually improving. The growth of more housing is available, and so with that happening, Butterball and the Common is needing more and more employees, so we're going to have the growth, especially if we have the housing to furnish that. So with the growth, we're going to have kids, and so the kids be going to school here, and so hopefully, the school's going to be on top of things, make sure we have adequate room to take care of the additional growth, and that's probably one of the key things to stay on top of, just stay ahead of things. So.
Okay, Josh?
Yeah, I think a lot of what he's saying, we've got industry that that is here now with opportunity of more growth in the future. I think a lot of what we can do with the upcoming is the new CTE buildings. I think there's stuff that we can do as far as bringing more construction jobs and contractors into the CTE building and just growing off of that as far as job fairs, so on and so forth.
Okay, Tony?
Yes, I noticed there's more growth just with finding out what my zone included and seeing that there were some streets there that I didn't quite know existed. And okay, and it's like the houses are built and there's people in them already. So if we're growing, that means more people in the schools, more students in the schools, more parents who might want to move here if we have good jobs to offer them, and they might want to move here if we have a quality education in our schools. So I think that's what we need to look for.
Okay.
The second question will start with you, and then everybody else will have a chance to answer. The school board has an optics problem with regards to transparency. Prior to meeting, board members eat together in the conference room. Many community members believe that isn't transparent. Board business could be discussed. If elected, would you commit to eating your meal in the open boardroom in front of the public rather than behind closed doors?
Absolutely. Me personally, I would like to have a bigger space to have the board meetings anyway. I think everything that happens within the school board, decisions, anything that's talked about needs to be in front of the public. I mean, that's just my personal opinion.
Tony?
Transparency is a big issue in talking to people. That's one of the things that they mentioned, that they want to see the school board be more transparent. I don't know that we have to have a meal at all. But anytime we come in the building, then maybe we should just be out there and be in front of everybody right from the beginning. I agree.
Okay. On the meal situation is, I could do without it. I've been a school board member 17 years, and they did it even when I got on there, and they were doing it when I left, and they continue to do it. I don't know if it's really a necessity, because you're off in another room reading, nobody sees you. Everybody that comes to a school board meeting, they don't see you until the last minute, everybody kind of comes out. So I don't know if it's really necessary. By being on the board one other time, that I can say on our standpoint, most situations, it's like you weren't there to discuss school business. You was there to socialize, see one another, and whatever happens at the meal, but never business. And so on that part, I'd say it's really not a necessity.
I think the question comes from the community because they see the last meeting that they had at St. Paul was in the library, and the board was out in front with their meal, and the community was to be there, but the board meetings here, they're in the back, and so as we come in, we being the public comes in, they get to watch everyone file together, whereas in the St. Paul, where it's in a larger open space, they're all there together. I think that's the root of where the question comes from.
No,
So,
based upon that too, when we'd go down to St. Paul normally in November for Thanksgiving, they would appear, the cooks were so gracious about cooking us a real good meal. Up here, you either have pizza or a sandwich or whatever, which was fine. But but like you say, we were out in front of the public. You could intermingle; they could intermingle with you even before the school board meeting, which was good. But I don't think it's really necessary to have a meal. And you're off in a room and they don't see you, and then you just kind of come out. I agree with transparency is the main thing, and people can perceive. If you don't see it, you can guess what they're doing. And that might not be really correct, but if you don't know, you haven't been there, you wouldn't know that. But transparency is a key thing about where we're at today with this school board, and I would like to see it more transparent about how we handle the meetings in front of people, and also give a comment period. I'm on several, the city council, we offer people out in the audience to participate, and if they have a question or want to make a comment about anything, we address it. And I hope that with a new school board, we could address that and let everyone have an opportunity. The main thing is that you have to make sure that people understand you can't talk about personnel. You can't call out names. But if everybody would comply with that, we could listen to their concerns and maybe even have some feedback to address that. Then if we were kind of overwhelmed,
that's a really great point, and it's actually one of our questions.
Okay.
And so conveniently, this is one that you'll answer. So if you want to add more to that, feel free.
Okay.
But how is the board? How can you get more people to attend board meetings and contribute if you don't allow them to speak? Will you commit to having public discussions again?
Who's supposed to start?
You start.
Okay.
Yeah, because this was going to be the one that you were starting
I'd
with.
say
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely, if, whatever discussion's going on and it generates some, maybe it's going to happen at the end of the school board meeting, that you would offer the audience to participate, but then, let them have their chance to talk and bring it to their attention, and then as a whole board can, understand what they're saying and make a comment, that's great. If it's something's kind of like, why don't you look into this or that, or can you consider that? We can go back and address that and then come back and let people know that something really interesting we might want to tackle.
Tony?
I think we need to let the public know that we welcome their comments and that they should feel that they can come and express their concerns and they're not limited to a short time period, or, oh, you didn't get on the agenda, so no, you can't talk, or this topic is off, we're not going to discuss that. That's part of the transparency, and that's part of, I think, what they feel from the last couple of years has been lacking from the school board.
Josh?
Absolutely, I agree with him wholeheartedly. I think there needs to be a time, and I think what Stephen was saying was at the end of the session, absolutely, to have them come in and have open discussion between the board and the community, or teachers, or staff, anybody that wants to come in and have concerns or questions, that needs to be addressed. And it needs to be that everybody has a voice in this. We're all, whoever gets elected, we're elected. I mean, we have to be transparent. We have to be approachable. So I think it's a great thing.
I think that's something everyone agrees on. I know I see you at school board meetings because I go to them, and you've been at meetings and you serve on meetings and have attended meetings, but I just know I often sit by you because you're on that back row too, and I think we can we all see.
I have one more thing. I think if we have that attitude, I feel that we should want to promote parent involvement. From my experience, my kids were in school. When I saw students that did well, it seems like those were the kids who I saw their parents at all the school events and the games and the meetings and different school events. The parents that were involved generally have students that do well, so we should welcome the parents who want to be involved.
And that is a good segue, because you guys have mentioned over the past couple of years, transparency has been an issue, and we know about the Title IX issue within our school, so I'm going a little out of order, but...
I have one other comment based on this. I've been on the school board for 17 years, and then you come out from your little quick meal, and you sit down, and then you look at your audience. Normally, as a past school board member, you always see your staff, and very seldom you see parents or individuals, whatever, show up, and which is kind of surprising. But in going back and looking at that, is that if there wasn't anything really going on, people didn't have concerns, they didn't show up, because most time, most people say, oh, I don't want to go to the school board meeting, unless you have a cause or something's going wrong and you want to hear, maybe they're going to discuss it, whatever. But you'd come out and sit there and say, well, there's nobody out there, so everything's good. But then all of a sudden you start having an audience, it's like, okay, something's terribly happening. And then, in the last year, you started seeing the audience pick back up, because there's a lot of disgruntled people over what was going on. So, yeah, your audience kind of triggers off how your school board is functioning.
It's a gauge.
Yes.
It is a gauge. Well, based upon what's happened in the past, what would you do personally to restore the public's trust in the school board and in the school district? Was it Josh's turn?
It's your turn.
Josh, it's your turn to go first. So, based upon what's happened in the past year or two with transparency in the Title IX, what would you personally do to restore the public's trust in the school board and the district if you were elected?
I think a lot of it breaks down of the questions we just answered, is having, everybody come in, the community come in, and having those open discussions. The public feels right now that there is no transparency. It's almost like there's something that's being discussed here, but it's not translating into whenever they get to the main room. If we can have them come in and be able to know everything that's happening on that board meeting or during that board meeting, I think it'll just help.
Okay.
I think Title IX includes being a mandatory reporter, correct? And it seems like every job I've had, I've required to be a mandatory reporter, and I know what that means. And I think that was one of the downfalls of what what happened with the school and the abuse scandals in the last year or two. I would say I would like to see maybe some just across the board training on all of that. In talking to people in the community, I did talk to a woman who works at the elementary school, I think is an 8. She said, I didn't know I was supposed to call myself. I would just, if I saw something, I would go and tell the teacher or this person. No, they need to know what they're supposed to do. They did not handle that right. A mandatory reporter, you call right away. You don't need to question, you don't need to interview people, you don't need to investigate. You call and let the experts handle it. So that's what I would say. There needs to be some training for everybody first and let the public know.
Okay.
Well, I think transparency is the key thing, like Josh said, about the whole ordeal. If it's like you're getting the full story and heads up on anything that's happened to school in advance, and then at the meeting itself, that people will feel better, especially when the paper covers everything. There's no hidden secrets. The one thing about it is, even this last school board meeting, you attended that, or I did, and Josh attended it. That was just kind of one of the normal school board meetings where they're just taking care of the regular routine business. There wasn't really a new item to really discuss. And so, a lot of them are pretty general, and there's really not a lot of decision making, yay or nay on it. It's normally pretty black and white. There's one thought of this, and that's to vote for this, because that's to move on, to make the school run more efficient. But when there is subjects that come up that's kind of controversial, that needs to be really weighed out, number one, the board's going to probably be more knowledgeable on that subject versus a lot of times the audience, the public. And they're going to be, so by having that knowledge, it might look like, well, they're not really discussing it because they're already informed. And that's one thing in the past when I was on a board that we'd go in for agenda reviews before the school board meeting, which was good because if you had any questions, you could ask the superintendent, why are we doing this, or what's the pros and cons of
And
this?
to clarify, you would go in just yourself.
Yes.
And meet with the superintendent, not the board.
Right.
We need to
One-on-one.
clarify that.
And that was optional.
Yes.
On the earlier superintendents, that was a routine. And I thought it was really good that way you did have a kind of a quick review before the school board meeting, in which that's kind of there's pros and cons to that probably for the audience, because it seems like, well, they're more knowledgeable than what they're really discussing, which that throws everybody off to a certain degree. But it really helps the school board member because, we show up for a school board meeting and there's really not that much discussion with the superintendent and the board meeting for a whole month until the agenda comes out. You can have it at your house and look at it, but then also you have the option to go see your superintendent to sit there and say, I had a question about this and who did that or whatever. So you get a lot of things clarified versus being in public and that.
Well, it's kind of neat, the difference. You got the answer, right?
I did, but I
Did
want
you
to
wanna
add
add?
something.
Okay.
So I went back and watched on the school's website, went back and watched all the school board. I think they've got them from like October of last year. And there's a trend on every one of them. There's not a whole lot of discussion about the topics that are being discussed or the decisions that are being discussed. That's not the way it's supposed to be. That goes back to the transparency issue that we were talking about a while ago, is it almost seems like everything's predetermined before they ever get in the meeting. We gotta do better about that, plain and simple.
You guys are right in line with
Well, I
what
want
the
to
questions
do a
are.
quick follow-up on that too. There's some surveys right here. Parents did a survey at their parent-teacher conference, and we had all the surveys. And we've asked this, I think you guys have covered this, we've asked it of the other board, people ran for the board, but the board did not get good reviews by the parents. They did not feel the board was effective. Some, but not all. The superintendent didn't get great reviews. For some people she did, but that showed up on the survey. There was, people felt like the school didn't communicate very well. And I think we've covered that. But one thing that we really haven't talked about is the other thing that people felt very strongly about not having knowledge of is how the school spends their money. And so I think when you sit down and make these votes, is there something that you can do to communicate with the community, this is how we're spending the school's money? I mean, it is your money, tax money coming in.
I think
that's
it's
your
my
vote. Yes.
I think maybe some kind of an open forum. I can remember, I'm just gonna have to But where my mind is going is that I can remember with chamber meetings when they were talking about wanting to upgrade the square and do things to bring in new business, and that would mean like a tax increase, millage, and how they were gonna go about that, what their goals were and what they wanted to do. And they had these open forums. They went to the schools and they went to the meetings and they went to the Kiwanis Club and the Lions Club and all of those, and they talked about it. So better communication, put it out there and let people talk. I know they've had meetings before on where to put the new activities complex, or where we're gonna build a new courthouse, that kind of thing, or you invite the public. So let's discuss this topic. Okay, that might be something.
You repeat the question?
Yeah.
And don't worry about
It was
that.
pretty
That's
broad
fine.
there.
It's in the conversational format that we're doing it, that comes up, because we all get engrossed in what the other person's
Absolutely.
saying, and then we're like, wait, what was the
Well, so the surveys
Okay.
that were done by parents, we've briefly gone through them, and what stands out to us is the school board, parents felt the school board wasn't effective. Some parents, not all, by far not all, some, only some, didn't feel the superintendent was effective. And they also didn't feel communication from the school board and district to the community had been effective. But one that surprised me was the parents didn't feel like they knew where their money was being spent. And how is there a way to better communicate the expenditures of the board to the community and the parents?
Okay, go back to the survey. The years I was on there too, we had the surveys, and generally on a good year, everything went pretty smooth. And there's always room for improvement, because you could have 800 people do that, and then you could have 10% of them say they weren't sure about this or that topic. But it's kind of like this, that either it's not like it's a secret. You can always go to the superintendent and ask for some clarification of this, or even a school board member should be able to do that. And that's one thing too, I always took pride in, that anybody could call me anytime, anywhere, we could talk about school. It wasn't like, I don't know that number, I bet it's about school, I don't want, because a lot of people say, oh, I bet you're just swarming with phone call. Well, when everything runs good, you don't have that. But when there's issues, I never didn't mind people calling, and a lot of times it might not be so much the public, might be a teacher that had a problem about they couldn't get something done, whatever, and you kind of evaluate that and see where it takes you on that. And there's ways to handle that, and that's where school board members get trained how to handle a situation like that. But the perception of the public is very, very important about those. I think a lot of those is like the school is really big, and then an individual might have an issue just from the outside looking in, sit there and say, I don't know about that, because a lot of people just don't want to make a contact. I'd rather moan and groan to a certain degree versus contact somebody and get clarification, because it just perceives it looks like this. Well, I like to answer the question if they have a problem, and feel free to contact me. But in like the budget, the superintendent normally makes the budget, we review the budget. It's kind of like the city and the county has a budget too. And really, when you have just enough money to really cover the bases, like schools always been that way, they don't really never have that much change left over to really say, well, we're going to do that. Yeah, you put a little bit back in savings for the rainy day or all that, but the budget's pretty much speaks for itself. But it's always open for the public to make a comment, where you spend this on that, and it's there's a good trail to show that.
I have a question. Is the budget usually published?
Yes.
Where that's what I figure with everything else it is.
It's not really a line item, and I know that they do give very detailed reports to school board members, and they provide that to Madison County Record.
Mm-hmm.
Audra is very forthcoming with any financial information we ask for. So they do publish their budget. They're not required to publish it in as much detail as they have records of. But that's not a requirement on them.
No.
Did you have a comment on that?
Yes, I mean, I think, it goes back to a lot of what he said as far as the being able to contact him. I mean, I would like to think that I'd be the exact same way. And what, the thing that kind of bothers me is being on the website, not everybody's information is on there. why isn't it on there? I mean, it goes back to what I said a while ago. If you're an elected official of a certain zone and those people are voting for you, they need to be able to get a hold of you no matter what. I mean, if they have problems, if they have concerns, they need to be able to get a hold of you. As far as the budget, it might be a thing to where, you know, if it's over a certain dollar amount, like big purchases, you know, maybe that's when it goes to the public, you know, for their input. But like Stephen said, I doubt very seriously that there's a whole lot of money left over after, you know, you for payroll and everything like that. So, but I do think that, you know, the community's input is needed on some things.
Okay.
I've got one other thing. I can remember there was a few years ago when we had a chance to have a new school built out there on 412, and it didn't pass. And I think it was millage or property tax or something that was going up, and it didn't pass. And again, I think it's because they didn't get the point across. They didn't get, you know, their vision across to the public, and the people are going to say, hey, that's our money, and we want. It goes back to trust then. You know, why can't you manage with the money you already have?
Okay, so this will be an interesting conversation because none of you have been a part of this current board. So, given that,
Thank goodness.
well, it'll be interesting for the perspective that you bring to it as three people not in it. You're an outside looking in on it. What have you learned from what you saw with the Title IX conversations that you think the board and community should do different in the future? And I think it is either Steve or Josh's turn to go first, but I don't know who's first. So whoever wants to jump up.
Read it again.
Okay.
Yeah.
What have you learned from what you saw with the Title IX conversations that you think the board and community should do different in the future?
What the board should have acted more quickly. Again, mandatory reporting, that should have been a hotline call way before. I guess it was a month or two. And I appreciate, you know, I'm not on the board. I don't have kids in the school, but I appreciate what the newspaper put out there, and that's where I got my information mostly. And then, you know, a little bit talking to people, but maybe getting law enforcement involved a little sooner. You know, from what it said in the paper, the sheriff's deputy is like, oh, well, the school's handling it. Well, no, like I said, actually, when it's sexual abuse, it goes to the state investigators and they handle it, not your local DHS. If I was a caseworker, I did kids age 6 and younger, and I had some, but older kids like that, it goes to the state investigators. So there's that. And the parents are upset because they feel it was not transparent, that there were things being hidden and they weren't allowed a voice. And then the policies on behavior, I think, you know, the new board members need to take a good look at that and maybe change it. I mean, from what I could look up, you know, what it has on their website, talks about bullying and different, you know, other kinds of abuse, but it didn't talk about this. This was a pretty severe thing. They need to take a look at it and maybe change it. What most people are telling me is they feel that anybody that engages in that kind of behavior should not be allowed to play sports again. So that might be something that the board needs to look at. I don't think we can go back and revisit, but we can go forward.
I agree with what she says, that I think the main thing about, you know, looking back on this Title IX, what happened, number one is this handled totally inappropriate and too slow. The key thing now is to sit there and say, we've got a lot of room for improvement. And I'm sure they've instilled some new stuff they need to do. But once, you know, fortunately get elected, one thing I want to do is be reassured that the steps are in place, that this will never happen again.
Yes.
And then also on the terrible infraction of this is that maybe that was a higher magnitude that was actually covered up in the book of the discipline. So, you know, if they need to go back and review that and make something kind of a harsher punishment to a certain degree, because this is a pretty flagrant situation to do that. So it goes back to training the staff, because all levels of staff need to know this at all levels. You don't have to be athletics. And then make sure that there's a protocol of reporting this. Because a lot of times stuff happens in school, even being a past board member. I was one of the last ones to even know about it because they were either taking care of it or whatever, but we always ask, or something terribly happened, please let us know in advance, because you'd hate for the public to sit there and call you, what about this? Well, I'm the last one to know. Well, reporting that should be fast, but also the superintendent should tell the school board member, when you have such a terrible infraction like this, we're on top of this is what we're doing. That way, if a school board member gets caught by the public or a parent or whatever, at least they can have something to say, hey, it's being dealt with, it's in a timely manner, and more later. And I think that's key, because it's just really inappropriate. Another thing too that came out of this too, that I think there was a conflict of interest on this last one of the school board member. They should excuse themselves. When you have a conflict like that, you should automatically do it, but also the school board itself, when they see a member maybe shouldn't be there or shouldn't be talking or involved in a vote, to actually stand up and say, we feel like this is not appropriate for you to do that. Just stand up and do that. So you want to be, do your diligence.
Okay.
Josh?
I think they pretty well covered. I mean, you guys did a great job. But yes, I do think that they were slow to act on calling the appropriate, authorities on it. But I think what this has done for us is let us know that there is training that needs to be put in place throughout the whole district for various different things. Hopefully moving forward, if I'm elected, that's going to be something that will happen.
I think in talking to people on what happened with the major infraction, it was severe abuse. I mean, come on, that happened. When you talk to people, they feel the board didn't handle it right because they feel, I'm sorry, it's a small town, names get out there. I've been told, it was this person, that person, this person's kid, that person's kid. And so it looks bad, whether it may not have been, but when it gets reported, well, they went in and they appealed, and so things were changed, and there were some kids that got no punishment at all. And then, like I said, they're still allowed to play sports, and they're still allowed to maybe coach younger kids. People don't like that. And what they have said to me is they want all of the children, all of the families to be treated the same, to be treated equally. Nobody gets special privileges because of who they are or because they went and appealed. I can't say anything bad happened, but all I can say is it looked really bad.
That's one of the sad things about this. We're talking about kids were involved in this bad ordeal, and a board just can't sit there and at a board meeting sit there and really have an open discussion about naming names and who, what, when, where, and all this. So, with any school board member gets on there, we'll have to go through orientation. They'll figure out real quick what we can do, what we can't do, and it's hard for the public to sit there and say, well, they should say more. Well, when it gets down to talking about individuals, especially students, you can't name names and all that. But to address this even better would be, everybody be knowledgeable up front. Because I think if you show everybody cares and you respond really quickly, that even goes back to students. Hey, they will pay attention. Something good. A lot of kids say, well, I wouldn't report it because nothing's going to be done.
Yes.
Well, that's sad. That's real sad. But we need to change that mindset where it's like anybody in school with any kind of problem, that a student can go to a teacher, coach, whoever, anybody in administration, or you can contact the school board member and say there's a problem and who are called, and then follow through with that. That's the main thing, because even this, you see the ball was dropped several times. Then there was, even when it was reported and they started kind of looking at it, I don't even think they really took it all that serious. They should take it really serious, and then they should have acted on it really fast, because now I can figure out the severity of this without really doing some research real quick to figure out, is this accusations or did it really happen? Well, once you find out it really happened, then go to the full-fledged motion to sit there and say, we're going to expedite this as fast as we can, resolve this, nip and bit. And then when there's a recommendation too given to the school board, even about the discipline, you better have a dang good reason why you didn't follow what was on the books to sit there and say, this infraction probably says you do that. And then when you sit there, and that's what I think hurt the public so much, that everybody was what they knew thought it probably should have been a higher penalty, and it wasn't. And so that's where they just lost it with the school board, that they played soft, and you talk about safety of students, but I don't sound like it's too safe. And then it's long and drawn out. Then it goes back to FOI and all that stuff too, that there's a lot of meetings probably discussing this, and nobody knew anything about it, or they weren't coming back out with anything with the results of anything they was meeting about. So it's just a terrible situation, and that could be handled totally different, a lot better.
I appreciate your guys' time on that. We're moving into something just as equally as important, staffing, but not quite as heavy. Okay, so this year, my son's Spanish class, all the Spanish classes, but this is where it comes, ended at Christmas break and left many students having to choose another path entirely, meaning they had to transition into a different class style. Mine went to health, others went to health, others went to different classes, or transition to an online option because the teacher left at Christmas break. How can we recruit teachers to come to Huntsville and stay so classes won't have to be transitioned mid-year?
Please turn.
I think it's your turn now to answer first.
I've lost track.
It all runs together.
Let's go ahead, Josh.
I mean, I think we need to be more competitive with pay and benefits is one. I think having the new board will help also. The whole issue that's happened in the last 2 years is not done very well for our perception anyway for being able to recruit new teachers. And then there's something else going on for the amount of teachers to be leaving that's leaving right now. I don't know what that is, but there's something going on. You shouldn't lose as many teachers we have in the last 2-3 years without something going on. Like I said, I don't know what that is, but whoever gets on the board for our zone and the rest of the zones need to figure it out.
Well, teacher pay does need to be competitive, and I remember when my kids went to St. Paul, and there were a couple of excellent teachers there that ended up leaving after a while, and they went to Springdale or something because they could make quite a bit more money. So I can understand that. Maybe they don't have to have a teaching license to teach something. Maybe we can relax that. I did do a little bit of substitute teaching for a while in between jobs. I have a degree in education, but I don't have a teaching license, so that made the difference on the amount of pay I was gonna get per day. But there might be other talents and abilities that people have, but they don't necessarily have that college degree or the teaching license to be able to come and teach. There's other ways to offer incentives to get people to come.
Okay, on this, based on your school district size, really depends on how much money you get. In a small school district, you're lucky just to have the budget to run the school and keep the doors open. I would definitely love to, this last school board meeting, apparently they gave them a 3% raise starting this next school year, which is great. There was, I guess, some incentives from the state to help them get that number brought back up. But I know that Huntsville School District, especially the board and past boards, would always entertain the thought to promote that, because we was always behind the legs. You can't compete with Springdale Federal, but you like to still do that. And what happens is that we'd always get these kids just right out of college, and their first choices were probably somewhere else to make more money. Normally, if you want to start off, let's make more money. Well, Springdale Federal didn't need them or whatever. And we'd be fortunate to get our local people. They want to come back and be here. And they say, well, I'd work for the lower pay just to have my home here in Huntsville, which is great. But when you have, like you say, more of a need than anything else, that it's hard to attract them when you are on that kind of the bottom line of 36,000, 37,000 now. That really attracts a lot. And you will get some if they couldn't get the job somewhere else. Now, to retain them, I always wanted to know why we had teachers leave. And you'd hope that you could see the letter, or the superintendent could give you some feedback for each one that actually left. And most part, after you find out, would be that they went for the other money. They got a better job somewhere else, and they finally got that. Then you had the people who retired. Then you had some that probably well, I really didn't like my job here, and there wasn't much of an opportunity. for another job here, so I looked somewhere else and found something. Or they decided to get out of education for whatever reason. But, you know, even with this COVID going on and all this, there's a lot of people didn't want to have work with the mandates and all that problem. Then any other job would probably work better than being tied down with some details you have to do with school. So it's a tough thing, and definitely you love to recruit as best you can, and especially even the numbers of the kids coming out of college now with a teacher's certificate are getting smaller and smaller. So it's getting harder and harder to compete. Then my thing as a past board member, I never did like hiring somebody that wasn't certified or got a certificate, because, you know, they went the whole 9 yards, got the education to do that. But when things get really tough and some of those harder jobs to fill weren't there, and so you had to lower the playing field and, you know, do the best you can to go ahead and have that class and have that person that's probably maybe have a bachelor's degree but it's not in that field or don't have a teaching certificate. So it's tough, and you have to do that sometimes. And a lot of times you don't have that control of your employee people. You got to get the pool and pick the best you can.
Okay. All right. I did have another question about how to get teachers here, but you guys addressed that, so we're just gonna go on to the next one. You guys
I've
did a
got
good job.
another one too. I think it's also, if you have a thriving community, that somebody that's, well, I'm looking for a job teaching, I just got my degree, where should we look? They would come to Huntsville if they thought there's a thriving town, they've got a thriving downtown, there's jobs to be had, there's things to do, and they've got a really progressive, innovative school district. Let's apply there. You know, let's apply to Huntsville and see. You know, it takes more than just the school. I think it takes the whole county.
Okay. All right, so we talked a little bit about teacher retention and why teachers are leaving. Maybe we need to know more about that. But other than Title IX and transparency, what are some other top concerns that you think the board needs to address? Tony.
What people have said to me, they mentioned a lot, it just seems like they want their children to be safe when they send them to school. And I've actually talked to people who told me, as looking at grandchildren, I'm not putting them in Huntsville Public Schools, we're gonna homeschool because of what happened. You know, it's like, okay, this could be a trend. So, yeah, it's something we need to take a look at. But safety, they don't want them, they want them to be able to do extracurricular activities and that it's being monitored, and you know, there's somebody that's watching what's going on, and also that the kids would feel confident enough and safe enough to go to a teacher or a counselor or somebody, you know, adult, and say, this is what happened to me. You know, it's bad. It seems that that's what happened to those kids. Even when they first interviewed them, nothing happened to me, and then it turns out, yes, it did later on, and that it even went back farther, and it was more severe than they thought once they started to dig in. So safety, safety's a big issue.
I agree with that. I think on that standpoint of safety, is to let the public know that the school district has that as a #1 priority, to that, let them know that when their child's here, we're gonna look over them and protect them best we can. The main thing about that too is also say, to show the public too, training is going to go with that for the people in the school district, to be aware of that, be self-conscious of that, have your ears open, ask questions. You can see the kids that are kind of suffering, that don't want to raise their hand or don't want to ask for help. Be a little more out forth going to them and saying, hey, you know, I want to help you. I think if you have a problem, you come talk to me. I don't think we have enough of that. And I think there's such a rat race in school now that, you know, you probably have a child that has like 7 classes and, you know, might have a favorite teacher, but is that relationship close enough where you can sit there and say, hey, really, I feel uncomfortable about this, or this happened to me. I just want to tell somebody. I don't even know if that would happen. You'd want that to happen, but to sit there and say, I think our outreach should be put more effort in that. And then specify the training, specify the awareness to the public that safety is a big matter to us, and we won't do that. Another thing is to always promote what we can when we have the money to do it, to expand on our education of what opportunity our kids can have, especially in the CE stuff. Is that, you know, there's more and more kids maybe don't want to go to college, and with this offered, maybe we should expand on it to give some of the kids another opportunity that, if there's something really I like, I'm going to do that, and we're giving that helping hand to go forward with that. So I think promoting more educational opportunity.
Josh?
I mean, absolutely the safety. What he was talking about, the CT, I think that's a big thing for our district. I think it's huge for up here in Huntsville and down in St. Louis. Coming from, a trade position, in the trade field, I mean, I don't do the electrical work anymore. I sell the material that does that, but, that's been a very, very good career path for me. And I think for a lot of the kids in this district, a lot of them, they don't want to have to go to college, but I do think that the trade is a very, very lucrative career for these kids. And I think that's something we can expand on. I know just a few contractors that I know personally, they do something with Springdale where they even do where they come in and sign letters of intent, saying, we're going to go to work for this contracting company doing this. And they put it in the newspaper. And, it's a big deal for these kids. I think it'd be a great idea for us to do also.
One thing about the CTE program, and that was one of the questions that I had, I thought you guys answered it, but the CTE building in St. Paul is currently not being used because they can't get a certified teacher down there to teach that program that they wanted to use the CTE building for. Now, I know Mrs. Kimball is working really hard on that, and but it is a problem that you have the building down there, but it's not going to be utilized. I think she was in maybe finding a teacher, and that's the last time we talked to her, that she was working on that. But that building has not been used because they couldn't retain a teacher for it.
It's been done for a year.
Yeah.
That's sad.
That is sad.
So this is the next to last question. The last question is real easy. This one isn't hard either. Okay. What research or conversations have you already had or done, or do you plan to do to get the issues from the constituents in your district? So how do you plan to make yourself available? What have you already done to make yourself available to those in your zone that you'll be serving on the board? I think it's probably your turn to start first.
Okay. I've already, started reaching out, doing some door-to-door stuff. I've got, of course, this is happening. Monday, meeting with the Huntsville Education Association. Next Saturday, I've got a meet and greet planned at the coffee shop. Me and a few others, the candidates from the other zones. Everybody's welcome, by the way, to come. Got the one up there at the church. I think it's the Republican.
Meet the candidates.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of things like that. The problem is, I've been to a few of these. There's not a whole lot of people coming out. We need people to come out. We need informed voters to come out and, get the information that they need to make an informed decision on who to vote for. So I'd like to think that I'm doing my part by making myself available. I just need people to come out and listen to me.
Okay.
I've done door-to-door campaign. I think that's more my style, and I've done an interview, and then I've done this. I'm going to do the meet the candidates. I do want to try to get over there at the coffee shop. They're supposed to get me a date at some time. So, plan those things and just get out there. And yeah, I'd like to see more people. I don't know what's going to happen with the meet candidates, but they're planning on using that gymnasium, and you can have tables, and hopefully people will come out and you can talk to them, one-on-one or in groups, because they said, like you guys said, we don't have time to be here all day long for people to make speeches. So you just have to get out there and go to events and talk to people and find out what they want the board to do.
Okay.
But the main thing is that there's a reason why everybody's running, because of the bad situation that happened the last 2 years, and mainly the Title IX issue, which was terrible. I think that's where I'd say 90% of the people have a problem with the school board now. This is how that was handled. That's one of the reasons, the main reason I ran, that it was handled inappropriately, and my thought was it can be handled a lot better. And now we need some new faces over a whole situation to reflect a change and a good new focus on fresh ideas to go forward with that. When you go around here and get your petition signed, everybody would, say, for me it was, since I'm going at it again, why do you want to do this? Because, they've always been told that this was a thankless job. When everything's going good, they can say, Steve, good job on the school board. It ain't happened. But when things really go south, there's all of a sudden, you start seeing issues, or people would call you and say the issue. But you know, it's the sad thing about it is, it doesn't mean it has to reflect on all school board members. On this situation, it looked kind of like that. But, you know, there's people that do try, and I always try to address anything somebody would come to me and have a concern with, and follow up with them. Let them know I'm willing to listen and focus on what you're doing. I'm going to give you the guidance of where you need to go, who you need to talk to. Then let me know how that went. If it didn't go anywhere, if I feel like it's really got some merit, I'll go to battle for you. And I always want to battle people, always answer the questions, very attentive to any concerns they had. And then same way when you go get your signatures, you know, you go ahead and tell them, hey, the reason I'm running is because of this, and everybody knows the reason why everybody's running now.
Well, that is perfect, because you guess what your last question is. Why should people vote for you? We'll start with you. You opened us, right? You got first, so we'll go.
I think Tony opened
Did you open us or
Yeah.
no?
She opened it.
She opened.
Okay, so you'll close us. So we'll just go down the table and why they should vote for you. So you can go first. You brought us there.
Okay. I think one thing, I think any of us could do the job. Good job. I think for me, the experience, I've been there, done that. I felt like I was very successful. I had people contact me when all this was going on. Hey, Steve, you need to run again. This is terrible. So my past record experience, been there and doing that, it's going to be a mind-opening to a lot of people, especially a new board. When you go to your orientation at Little Rock, you're going to find out really quick the do's and the don'ts. And that's not really out and open for everybody to know that, because, hey, I'm going to fire a coach, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. You're just one school board member, and number one, you shouldn't have that kind of agenda. You got to work together. And then another thing too is that you need to have the ability to work with other school board members, work with the public, and be at their beck and call. I think besides this, the main thing needs to happen now, and it's probably needed more than any time before, is that we can sit there and discuss what we'd like to bring up. Well, you go to a school board member, you don't really see at a meeting somebody bring up a new subject and talk about that. I think there should be some times, and it goes back to school board, if that's what the school board wants to do, which I would say we should do that, is have other meetings besides school board meetings. And just say, hey, let's have a brainstorming. Let's have the public come in and let us brainstorm some more ideas, and then let them kind of hit us with some stuff and see what we can work out, and then say, hey, it looks like the momentum's going here or the direction's going here. Let's run with it. In some situations, a lot of schools probably wouldn't want that because we want to run our own show. We don't want involvement. But I think that now we need the involvement and let people know that we're doing the best we can, and there's an opportunity for input. Going back even to teachers. I was always wanting to know what teachers were really feeling, because I'd have people that me and my daughter now teach school. They come back and say, "How was your day at school?" Just shake their heads. And it's like and then a lot of them don't want to even talk to you about it because hey, we don't want to get in trouble, because it trickles up or trickles down, whatever. But I think there is an opportunity to say that maybe once a month, have a different school come to our school board meeting and say, hey, what teachers that would want to show up from the high school, and hey, how was your day, and what can we make something better to work towards making us more successful, and then rotate each month for a different school, and let those folks know, and let the administration know, especially because it's kind of like teachers aren't easy to be around administrators to talk frankly. But even if we have these open meetings, that even teachers, hey, y'all go back and brainstorm at your campus, and then y'all select one or two of your spokesmen, come back and share with your thoughts and ideas with us, and go from there, and make it kind of like it kind of can trickle up. There's nothing wrong with something trickling up.
Okay.
Josh, why should people vote for you?
Well, I want to second kind of what he's saying about as far as having the spokesperson from each campus come and kind of talk with the board itself. I think that the Huntsville Education Association, that's kind of the path that they are on. As far as voting for me, I'm a hard worker. I will work for these kids. I will work for this staff. I will work for the community. I will work for everybody. That's just how I am. I've always been that way. As seen on being on the baseball board for 5 or 6 years, did the same thing there. But I appreciate the time that you guys have given us. And I appreciate, all the constituents out there that has given me the time to talk with them. But at the end of the day, I'd sure like your vote.
Tony?
Well, I feel I have some unique qualifications for the school board. I have been involved in community service organizations since I moved here. I would look at this as another opportunity to serve my community, and when I have had other jobs where I was an advocate for my families, and I would take that same attitude to this. I think the parents and the families deserve decency and respect. And I think one of the main goals we need to do is restore trust and confidence in our school system with the community.
Okay, well, thank you guys very much for being here. Everybody, don't forget to vote on May 24th, and we appreciate all your time. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity.